Hello and thank you for joining in on today's training. Heart & Solutions is a proud provider of CE-eligible trainings for our counseling community. This training may be eligible for continuing education credit hours through either the National Board for Certified Counselors, provider number 7376, or the Association of Play Therapy, provider number 21-645. To obtain CE hours for today's training, be sure to follow the steps in the description below to find and take your quiz.
Welcome to another You Need a Training series with Heart & Solutions. Today's speaker is a Heart & Solutions therapist, Briannan Langdon. And Bri, I will let you introduce yourself today.
Awesome. So I'm Briannan Langdon. I'm a school-based therapist with Heart & Solutions. I originally created this training for the school staff at the school that I work at. They deal with a lot of burnout and difficult things. So self-care is hugely important, but it is also hugely important in all other professions and life in general. So self-care is any action that you use to improve your health and well-being. A lot of people just think it's going to get a massage every now and then, but there's actually a ton of different types of self-care. Physical would be taking care of your body, whether it's hygiene, moving your body, could even be going to the doctor when you're sick, things like that. Psychological is a little bit difficult. This one's kind of a tricky one to explain, but it's kind of like learning, thinking, continuing to grow, and being very self-aware as well. This can be done through journaling, checking in with yourself, getting feedback from people around you, whether it's in a professional aspect or family or friends. Emotional is similar, but a little bit different, more checking in with yourself, knowing what you're feeling and being aware of that and taking care of those feelings. Spiritual can be religious, but it doesn't have to be. This is finding meaning, purpose, support, hope, and making sure that your values that are important to you, you're staying in line with those. And then social would just be fostering your relationships that are important to you, as well as finding connection, whether that's with friends, whether that's with coworkers, snuggling with a pet, whatever social things kind of fill your battery or make you feel good. And then the last one is professional. This is maintaining that work-life balance, creating habits, systems, and having peers, whether it's at work or friends, that help you maintain that balance. Why is self-care important? It can reduce high stress, burnout, poor mental health, physical health. It can have an impact on so many different aspects of your life. It's good to remember that you are important as your clients, coworkers, everyone else. There's that cheesy quote about you can't pour from an empty cup. So making sure that you're taking care of yourself is hugely important. It can make life, your job, everything more enjoyable. So kind of like I said in the last slide, self-care can have a huge impact on your mental health. It can also have a huge impact on your physical health. It can help you manage stress, lower your risk of mental health difficulties, increase motivation, and decrease burnout in a lot of different things. Self-care, when it comes to physical health, can also lower your risk of illness, increase your energy, improve sleep, and improve your overall health. So it's kind of crazy the impact it can have on different aspects of your life. This one I feel like is important because a lot of people have a view of self-care, but it's not always true. So self-care is doing something that will bring you happiness and make you feel good in the long run. It is a health-enhancing behavior, whether that's mental or physical health. It is not luxurious, expensive experiences all the time, but it could be for some. If you want to go to the spa or get a massage or things like that, it can be. It doesn't have to be that. It is also not forcing yourself to do something because you think you should if it's not what you really need. So an example of this is I struggled a lot when I was doing my master's because I was working full time, doing an internship, doing classes. There was not a whole lot of time for self-care. And I found myself sometimes like, no, you need to go work out, or you need to do this, or you need to do that, which sometimes is self-care for me, but not when I'm exhausted or I'm running on E, when I had all those other things going on. So in those situations, I really needed to sleep in an extra hour rather than working out, or I needed to go out and have dinner rather than cooking at home, or whatever it might be. So it's just good to know. It's great to have routines, and it's good to know what self-care works for you. But sometimes you really just need to check in with yourself and see what it is that you really need in that moment. Examples, there's a gazillion. Learn a new hobby or skill, do your favorite hobby, read or listen to a podcast, listen to music, sing, play an instrument, do a digital detox or shut off your phone. This one can be way helpful. I know we are in a very like techie world where we're on all social media and you're checking your email and this and that, but sometimes even for a couple hours, just shutting that off and doing something can be very relaxing. Get regular exercise or find exercise that you really enjoy. Eat healthy, regular meals, stay hydrated. Journaling can be super awesome for some of those types of self-care we talked about, whether it's like the psychological, emotional, kind of checking in with yourself to see where you're at. Praying, spending time with family or friends, getting outside, whatever that might be, fishing, going for a hike, even just laying out to get some sun, playing a video game, playing games, watch a TV show or movie you enjoy, have a snack, make sleep a priority, take care of your hygiene, try something relaxing, set goals and priorities, practice gratitude, focus on positivity, stay connected, be mindful, ask for help if needed, come up with an affirmation. I am enough. I can do this. Take a break when needed, be artsy. So that could be painting, drawing, however you want to express yourself. And just laughing sometimes can be super helpful when it's been a long day or stressful day. Colleen, do you have any extra examples of self-care that might help you?
No, I really love these examples, and I love highlighting so many varieties, right? And going back to that slide that you were talking about earlier too, it doesn't have to be elaborate or expensive or even time consuming. Just recognizing here's where I'm at and here's what I need today. And one thing that I think is really helpful to remember too is that just because it worked yesterday or last week doesn't mean that that's the right self-care option for today. And I love the example you gave of some days going to the gym is going to be a great option, and some days getting that extra hour of rest is what you need. And so this list is wonderful, and thinking through how to incorporate all of these on different levels, and not feeling like you talked about, not feeling like I'm supposed to do something one way or another, which would defeat the purpose of taking care of ourselves.
This one I really like, because self-care is different for everyone, kind of like I said. It could be a bubble bath. It could be watching a movie. Other people, it's like going on a hike, getting outside, doing a woodworking project. Like, it's good to know for you what those things are that bring you joy and kind of give you those good feelings, something to focus on outside of work or family or whatever you might be stressed about. So if everybody could take just a couple minutes to think of 2 self-care things that they could do outside of work. So whatever to recoup from work. And then another couple minutes to really focus on something you could do at work, whether it's journaling for 5 minutes, whether it's just doing a mindfulness activity to take in your surroundings and take a breather. There's so many different things you can do just quick, even at work. So take a couple minutes and kind of think about those things. So once you thought about those things for a couple minutes, make sure they're things that can be easily implemented, like not something you're going to struggle to do. And then Colleen, will you go ahead and share again?
Yeah, absolutely. I really liked that prompt, right? Of it wasn't just, oh, what are some self-care things you can do? I liked kind of not being forced, right? But being forced to think about what can you do in two different environments. And it really allowed me to think about the differences in that. Okay, when I'm outside of work, what can I do? What do I enjoy doing? And when I'm at work, or I'm in a situation where maybe my favorite things or my go-tos aren't an option, what can this look like? And working with kids, right? I've thought about this from a child perspective before, when I'm thinking about things like coping skills or things like that, where maybe they're stuck in the car and their siblings are frustrating them. But as an adult, right, which is why we're having this conversation, we tend to put ourselves last. And so not giving myself permission or time to think about it in this context. So really appreciated that. And for me, my self-care often comes in the form of physical movement. So going to the gym, taking a walk. Those that are closest to me will often prompt me to go for a walk some days if they can see that things are a little bit stressful. And so doing that. But I was thinking about what we were saying earlier as well, and how some things that are kind of constant go-tos and this works and this helps aren't necessarily always going to be that. And we just got a new puppy at home. And while I love him, it changes the nature of my walks. And so our older dog is easy to walk with, knows the drill, knows the routine. I can kind of tune out on those and take care of myself. Throwing a puppy in the mix, those walks right now are not about me. They're about training a puppy and worrying about his safety and, you know, all of the things that come with that. So I've had to be really mindful the last few weeks of, is this walk a self-care walk for me, or is this a puppy walk that's another task added to my list? And so I really appreciate this conversation today, and thinking about things like that of, oh, I should feel better because I'm walking and walking helps me, except I'm walking and adding responsibilities right now. And so encouraging people to really consider not only the self-care they're doing, but the nature of that action. But outside of work, like I said, going to the gym, taking walks, I also really like reading. And so I always joke that I'm forcing myself to sit still, but reading helps me feel productive, while not go all the time. And then I really liked, like I said, the prompt about thinking about what we can do at work when sometimes time is really limited. We can't, like we were talking about, can't go spend a day at the spa while we're at work. But for me, I sit most of the day. So standing up even and stretching, going outside, right? And just standing outside for a few minutes really helps me reset and then kind of approach the next task with a really, hopefully much clearer mindset for that. So.
It's so funny that you just said that, because I was going to say, even taking 5 minutes at work to stretch in your office or to walk outside and sit for a couple minutes and come back in can even be an awesome reset and helpful. And then another thing that you said, a lot of times if you have kids or you have extra work or you have friends that are important to you, a lot of times we end up putting ourselves last. And so when we think about like one of those first slides, the different types of self-care, it's so important to find a good balance, because social self-care is awesome, getting out to go have dinner with friends or spend time with people. But if you're exhausted from work and you really just want to go home and relax, but you made this commitment, that isn't going to be social self-care. That's going to be you wearing yourself out even more. So like making sure that you have a good balance of all those different types is huge and so important.
Absolutely.
Setting and maintaining boundaries. So setting boundaries for yourself when you will do work, when you'll have family time, all of the things that are important to you, set those boundaries, stick to them as long as it feels good. Again, if for some reason you have work to do, maybe you save it for a different day because you're already outside of that time and you would rather spend some family time. That's what's going to make you feel good. Scheduling breaks, kind of like we talked about with that last slide, even if it's 5 minutes. Set a work start and end time, take time for self-care, schedule that in if you can. Keep track of those times with a planner, calendar, phone. I know there's a gazillion different ways to keep track of things now. And I know I use all of the different ones. I have my work calendar. I have a planner that has work and fun stuff. I have my phone that I put certain important things in. So there's tons of different ways to keep track of those boundaries and scheduling that time for yourself.
I love that, Bri, right? We're so quick to schedule time for everyone else, right? There's no way that we would skip putting our, our children's appointments, our work appointments, even our, our partner's appointments. Like everyone's really quick to make sure those are on there. And yet it's really rare that you'll see someone with something in their planner that's for them. And so that encouragement to schedule that the same way you would anything else, right? Like you said, even if that's 5 minutes outside, giving it space that it deserves on your schedule for the day. I love that reminder.
This one I really like too. I do this with a lot of my clients. What is in your control and what is out of your control? So when dealing with stress or a difficult situation, there are always things we can and cannot control. When we focus on the things that are outside of our control, it leads to even more stress, anxiety. We talk a lot about if you focus on things that happen in the past, that's going to lead to like down feelings. If we're focusing on the future and things we can't control, that's going to be a lot of anxiety. So when we neglect the pieces that are within our control, what we can control, again, more anxiety. So the example that I had is your job changes multiple processes of doing something. So you worry, you don't understand the changes, you're stressing about all of these things, and you continue to stress about work and all of these changes. It could lead to these things even outside of work. Overnight, you're like, how am I going to do that tomorrow? I don't understand like the process of how we do this now. And then on the next slide, it kind of talks about where we can change that. So you worry you don't understand the changes. So instead of all night worrying about, I don't get this, I can't believe they changed this, being upset, having anxiety, you end up reading through the emails and documents that talk about the new steps and walk you through that process. You recognize what you can control, and which was reading through those emails, but also you decide, I'm still not 100%. Instead of continuing to stress, I'm going to set up a meeting with my supervisor. They can walk me through the changes, things like that. So you learn the process and then you have decreased stress instead of being stuck in that feedback loop of, I don't get it. Why did they change this? And being upset and anxious.
I think that's great, right? And it allows us to access the parts of our brain that are capable of engaging in that form of self-care, right? Asking questions, seeking clarification, getting information is a form of self-care. Like you said, it decreases those feelings of anxiety. And I love the work example, right? I'm also thinking about just things at home, right? And thinking about when plans shift, or we see this again. Most of my worldview is working with children, and so we see this with kids when it's like, hey, we're supposed to go to the pool today, but now it's raining, right? And so even if I say we're going to go to the library and it's still something really fun, there's that moment where we enter that emotional reactive part of our brain, right? Like, what? No, you said the pool. Oh, I don't hear, I can't process. The library will still be really fun. And as adults, like you're showing here, we do that same thing, right? No, this is not how it's supposed to be. What if this means that, but whatever. And we can really eat up a lot of time with that worrying, right? So I really like this intentional effort of, okay, I can't control that tonight, but I can control these pieces, and here's what I'm going to do about it tomorrow. And really looking at that as a form of self-care as well, giving yourself permission to not spend all night worrying about something that you can't do anything about at that moment.
So this kind of goes back to that emotional self-care, making sure that you're reflecting on your feelings, your needs, which we've kind of talked about throughout the presentation about you might think something self-care, but depending on what you need in that moment, it might not be. So instead of pushing through all the time, if something happens, make sure you take a few minutes to recognize what you are feeling and what you may need. So sometimes scheduling a time to pause and check in with yourself throughout the day, or even just once a day, like in the morning, how am I feeling? Or maybe you get home from work and that's a reset. You're super stressed at work. You just take a break, like we said, those couple minutes to see, where am I at? What am I feeling? What do I need? So an example of this could be, I need a break. So instead of eating in the staff lounge, being social, I'm just going to shut my door and I'm going to take a quiet lunch to kind of reset. Maybe it's listening to a podcast. Maybe it's listening to music over lunch. Whatever kind of helps you calm down, relax. Or this is one that I do a lot, sometimes probably too much. Today was mentally exhausting. I will wait to do my paperwork until tomorrow and we'll do something I enjoy after work. So sometimes just telling yourself like, it's okay to wait and do that a different day because today was too much.
Absolutely. Right. Thinking about that at home, right? It's okay, like I'll get to the dishes tomorrow, right? There's days that not doing the dishes is going to be problematic, right? My self-care needs the dishes done. And then there are days that leaving the dishes in the sink until tomorrow is the best thing I can do for myself, right? And I think, what you're talking about of reflecting on your needs in that moment and recognizing what's going on for me today at this time so that things don't become a bigger issue, right? So I don't want to see the dishes stay in the sink for a week or 2 weeks or a month, because that's indicative that I'm not utilizing self-care in somewhere else. But leaving them there for the night and going to bed or spending extra time with kids or pets or a movie or whatever is really reflective of taking intentional stock in where we're at on any given day. I really like that.
I also love this one because like reflecting on those feelings, I know something that I do sometimes, and sometimes I recognize it and go, okay, I need to take a break or I need to do some self-care. Or my boyfriend might say, hey, like I can tell you had a stressful day at work because you're very short or and so sometimes he'll be like, hey, do you want to go for a walk or like whatever it might be. So it's good to check in with yourself on what you're feeling at different times throughout the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love this one, recognizing moments of joy and gratitude. So thinking of recent memories, funny stories that made you smile, that can brighten your day whenever. Writing down something funny that happened, a compliment, or anything positive to focus on throughout the day can be helpful. And thinking of something that you are grateful for. So I know when I presented this to the school staff, it was like, yes, are things stressful? Yes. Do kids misbehave? Yes, all these things. But they also have hilarious stories of random things kids said in class or somebody did something goofy. So just taking into account those like funny things that made you smile as well as everything throughout the day. Just coming back to this, if you're overwhelmed, stressed, whatever's going on, and thinking about, oh my gosh, yesterday when somebody said that in the middle of a meeting, I can't believe they said that and it was hilarious. Or in your personal life, like you got to go on a date and it was amazing or whatever it might be, just coming back to those positives. And then also thinking about all those things that you're grateful for. Sometimes if you're journaling, making a point to like write a couple of things that you're really grateful for that day or that week. So I really like this one.
Absolutely. And I've heard a few different versions of this and a couple that stand out to me. at my house, we play high-low buffalo. And so we talk about, our high from the day, our low from the day, a buffalo of just something random that happened that day. I heard a version the other day. I really like, somebody was saying they play a sweet, a sour, and a service. So something great that happened, something not so great, and something they did to help someone else. And then we hear the word trigger a lot in, the mental health community, and talking about things that were triggering or, resulted in some not so great feelings. But somebody was talking about how they search for their glitters throughout the day. So they may have some triggers, but they've got some glitters in these moments like you're talking about, of just joy that kind of found their way into their day. And I've just been really reflecting on that lately, of what a great way to phrase that and find those.
Yeah, I like all of those. That's awesome. Routines, again, routines are amazing. Scheduling that time in, also checking in with yourself to see what you really need that day. So morning routines can include things like having the right mindset for the day, get moving, coffee. I really like the last one, just an extra few minutes for yourself. Like, I know if I schedule enough time in the morning where I'm sitting at home and having breakfast and drinking my coffee, even for 5-10 minutes, that makes my day so much different than if I'm eating a granola bar and drinking my coffee on the way to work and I'm in a hurry and this and that. Nightly routines can help us wind down, can include getting off of electronics, reading, just kind of checking in with yourself and processing the day, getting ready for the next day, things like that. And then kind of like we talked about, self-care can be scheduled into any time of the day. So quick walk, reading for a few minutes, taking time to go outside and breathe. Setting time after work to reset is something that has hugely helped me to just like, okay, this is what I'm doing. And that means no more work stuff. I'm not checking emails. I'm not working on notes, whatever it is. Like, the rest of today is personal time. So I love routines. And sometimes you have to maybe take things out of your routine or put different things in depending on what you need.
Yeah, I think that's such a great concept, right? Here's how I'm going to start my day, or at least here's how I'm going to attempt to start my day most of the time, right? Like you, my mornings go so much differently when I get a few minutes. For me, nothing is better than a morning where my kids sleep till the time they're supposed to, and I get a few minutes to drink coffee and read a few pages in the morning. And it doesn't always happen, but I think knowing most of the time it can, or it does, right, gives us that ability to cope with the days where our routine doesn't get off, or we have a doctor's appointment in the morning, so we don't have the luxury of using that time. But I think routines give us that stability that you're talking about, and same with nighttime, right? We need to tell our brain it's time to turn off. And as you were talking about scheduling self-care, and especially at the end of the workday, I couldn't help but think about, so many people now are working from home, be that all the time, some of the time, and that transitional time from office to home is really blurred right now, and potentially for the foreseeable future. And thinking about, okay, so what is that routine going to be so that I can leave work at work, even if work is in my home? And how am I going to set that dividing line, and thinking about, okay, is that I'm shutting the door to my office. I'm going for a walk and really clearing my head. I'm scheduling something out of the house so that I am physically leaving my workspace, whatever that may be, that concept of a clear delineation between work and not work.
You made me think of another random thing is I have some days at home and then some days in the office. And those office days, I have like a 25-minute drive. So sometimes like using that time, whether it's like I have a certain pump up playlist or something that like puts me in a good mood, or I'm just being really mindful and taking in like the things I'm driving by, and then doing those same things kind of on the way home can even be part of that reset.
Absolutely. Years ago, I had a 45-minute commute each way, and I had sort of a social hour on the way home with a good friend, and realized how much we disconnected, right? When I lost that commute time and that kind of built in talk time. And it was, okay, how do I restructure this? How do I find this? in my life because it's important to me. And so really paying attention to what are our work schedules, what is changing, where am I at, what do I need on the days where it's not so clear cut. Yeah. I'm a big believer in routines too, Bree. So I'm glad you brought them up.
When to seek help. So if you're dealing with symptoms pretty consistently, like difficulty sleeping, maybe you start eating a ton, you're not eating enough because you're so stressed, struggling to get out of bed in the morning, not enjoying those things you used to, having trouble like staying focused, and just not being able to function in your daily life, taking care of those responsibilities. Self-care is amazing. It can be super helpful to manage a lot of these things, but sometimes it can't either. It can't fix everything. So knowing when it's important to go check in with your doctor, med prescriber, seeing a mental health professional, whatever it might be, but seeking those supports if you feel like you're taking care of yourself, but you're still struggling with all of these symptoms.
Absolutely. Right. Sometimes society in general can be really quick to say, just take care of yourself, just go do this, just go get a massage or whatever. Like you said, those are great. They're wonderful, but they are wonderful when all other systems are go and everything's in place and they're supplemental to keeping us in a great space. But there's times where that's not enough. And there's no shame in that being the case. So nobody's done anything wrong when standard self-care isn't enough. And so these reminders of here's some indications of let's get some extra support in there. Let's get things where they feel best for the individual. And, I know we were talking about like the dishes earlier and things like that. And I think for me, really thinking about the intentionality of a decision, right? So if I'm intentionally not doing dishes one night because I'm choosing to spend time doing a movie night or going to bed early or whatever it may be, versus the dishes have been in the sink for weeks and weeks and weeks because I can't do them. I can't find it in me to do them. I no longer care about them. I'm not getting out of bed. Really, once that decision is taken away from us because we don't have the intentionality behind it, a really great indicator. I'm going to jump in here too, because it made me think of something else, and I'm not sure, maybe you talk about this later too, but when I think about seeking help, right, and the boundaries around where am I at, and is this workable with some increased self-care, or do I need some extra support? It makes me also think about some of the boundaries I set for myself of, when do I need to step up my self-care game or do something? I have my standard kind of, again, things are good. This just keeps me where I want to be. And then I have sort of some standard rules for myself of, like things at work are overwhelming. And those are different for everyone. I'm pretty open. One of mine is if I start to have dreams about coworkers or clients, right? Like, I'm going to schedule a day off. I don't necessarily need to do that the next day. It's not a crisis situation, but it tells me I'm bringing stuff home with me that I don't want to be. I actually just saw a post on social media this morning talking about burnout, and I don't believe this person was in the mental health field. I'm not really sure what field they were in, but they had been working some really, really long summer hours. They knew they had a break coming up in a couple of weeks as summer wrapped up, but they forgot their child's birthday, and they sent a message to their boss and said, like, I need some time, right? I need some date. Like, this is beyond the scope of my healthy functionality. And so, having those boundaries and knowing your signs and symptoms of where am I at, and doing those self checks, like you talked about earlier too, are so important to making sure we're kind of constantly aware of where we're at in our own process with this.
Yeah, I've made lists with kids too. Like, okay, here are 2-minute things we can do to kind of relax a little bit. Here are our 5-minute things. Okay, this is serious. I'm really like upset. this is my list. I need to ask the teacher to take a break. Or so just having like different options, you can look through those things and be like, that sounds terrible. That's not going to help. But this one, okay, that might be super helpful for whatever stage you're at in kind of the burnout or stress
I
scale.
love that. I want a 2-minute, 5-minute, 30-minute list. I love that idea.
All right. And then any questions over the presentation?
I think you've done such a wonderful job really kind of talking about self-care and what that means, right? We've talked a lot about how we hear that word a lot. It's really, you know, for better or for worse, it's become a really popular word. And making sure it doesn't lose its significance or its meaning or its importance in that, right? And so having these really, really real conversations of what self-care looks like and how to implement that, both, you know, in the workplace and at home and kind of on that day-to-day basis. I really appreciate all of the insight here.
Yeah, it's so important to know yourself, know what you need, and really take time to focus on that and foster those things.
Yeah. And I think you did a great job too, giving, you know, opening that door and that permission giving for, yes, let's do these things, and let's do these things, not just when it's a crisis. Having those routines you talked about, those morning routines, those evening routines, having those lists of things to choose from, scheduling that time in so that it doesn't feel like self-care shouldn't feel like a burden, right? And if I don't schedule it, now I've got to cram it in somewhere, and now it does feel problematic, right? So
More stressful.
yeah. So scheduling that in, being mindful, planning for those things, I think are all really great thoughts and insight to how we can not only talk about self-care and learn about self-care, but really incorporate it into our daily lives, outside of just the, oh my goodness, things are falling apart, I need this right now mindset. Wonderful. Bree, I very much appreciate you being here. This is a recorded webinar, so please be sure that you complete your quiz link. You have access to the evaluations that were in the email that was sent to you with your confirmation for this training. After you complete that quiz, you will be sent your CEU certificates. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out at the contact information that was provided in your confirmation email. And don't forget that you need a training.
Thank you for joining in on today's training. We look forward to having you join us again. Heart & Solutions is proud to provide CE-eligible trainings for our counseling community. This training may be eligible for continuing education credit hours through either the National Board for Certified Counselors, provider number 7376, or the Association of Play Therapy, provider number 21-645. To obtain CE hours for today's training, be sure to follow the steps in the description below.